Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Lori Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Lori Palau, and you guys, we are going to be talking about such an important topic today. And I have a great guest. I've actually been waiting, like seriously, waiting for this episode. And we purposely timed it around estate planning month, right? Because, there's a month for everything. So we timed it so that it would release right around when people have eyes and ears all on gathering their essential documents to get things in motion. But really, the topic today is something that is evergreen. It's something that we need to be, unfortunately, thinking about and practicing on a regular basis, regardless of kind of the season of your life. And that is about all types of digital organization and accessing your documents, succession planning. It's a kind of a big umbrella. And joining me is going to be somebody that you may be familiar with because she was on episode 329, and it's my friend Kate Hufnagel. And Kate is the founder of a company that she started called Digital Wrangler. And she's got a really fascinating story. And her emphasis in the organizing space is all about digital organization, which is a beast. And again, it's got so many different nuances. And she's really carved out this incredible, much needed lane in the space to help people just gather and make sense of all of the moving parts that you need, both in an emergency and also it can be like if you're just needing access to this information, to be able to have these things at your fingertips. But specifically, a lot of the need of what she created was born out of people in a sense of panic, people of passing away and not having things in place. And how can we streamline this and make it easier for people? And so I said, Kate, I have to have you come on and talk about this. She launched a training program along with a digital course. And I actually had the opportunity to test pilot it. And I got to tell you guys, it's phenomenal. I use it personally. I'm saying this truthfully. And this is something that I really, really, in the coming months, you're going to hear me talk more about this because it is something that I strongly believe, as much as I want people to have an organized space and deal with the things that are happening and the fires that need to be put out in the immediate, thinking about succession planning, thinking about where are my things? Where do my loved ones need to go to access this stuff when something is eventually going to happen, is equally as important as making sure that you've got meal prep and a good morning routine and all of that other stuff. So just kind of know that you expect to hear more about this in the coming months. But again, we have this estate planning month. You're going to be hearing a lot, seeing a lot on the socials about it. And I figured who better than to set the stage for us than my dear friend, Kate Hufnagel. Welcome, Kate, back to the show.
Lori, thank you so much for having me. When you reached out about having me on today's episode, I think I ran around my house a couple of times. I might have been yelling and screaming and jumping up and down. So thank you for inviting me.
You're so sweet. So obviously, and I've said this to you before, you're the real deal. And hats off to you because you touch on an area of organization that not a lot of people in the organizing space, let alone everyday people, want to tackle because it's not pretty, it's not sexy, it's not fun. You don't get to see it in the way that you can have that moment of a pantry or a closet once it's been renovated. This stuff is, but it's got such clout and such emotional weight to it. It has a bigger impact, I think, than people often give it credit for. So why don't you just give our listeners a little bit more insight, if they are new to you, about kind of who you are, what exactly you do?
Oh, well, again, Lori, thank you so much. So, Kate Hufnagel, I have 2 engineering degrees. So if I sound like an engineer, it is because I am an engineer. On a personal note, I got married later in life at the age of 48. I spent a number of years in our nation's capital working in the intelligence community and working on IT solutions. And while working in that community, it was drilled into us that we cannot keep information and knowledge in our brains. And in our personal lives, we all do a lot of that, right? I created my first will in my late 20s. I think I was a trendsetter from that respect. And I turned 50 this summer, and my estate plan has actually gone through 3 rounds of updates since that initial creation. I've had a couple of medical emergencies later in life at the age of 37 and 44. One of them required a trip in an ambulance. And I've also received a life-changing diagnosis that eventually wound up or resulted, I should say, in a hysterectomy. And about 3 years ago, I put all of my life and professional lessons to use, and I founded the Digital Wrangler. And like you were saying, Lori, this line of work is very heart-centered. It is also very values-based. And as I work with clients and I learn what really is most important to them, whether it's the photos on their phone or the family Bible that's been passed down, 3 or 4 generations. So it's a beautiful area to work in, but also, as you mentioned, there's not a lot of people who are dedicated in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love when I talk to other entrepreneurs, and you talk about your own life experience and how that has, like, your own story has woven into how your business is built, because what you needed, right? Or what wasn't available, and saw this kind of gap in the marketplace, if you will, of this is something that is so important. Why is, and again, it might be obvious to people, but why is that digital organization? And I actually refer to it as digital documentation. You were like, what do you mean by that? And I actually want to explain that, because I think the term digital organization can almost seem, it's so broad that I think people are like, a lot of times it's nuanced, and people think digital organizing, it means I'm organizing all my files, or I'm organizing my emails, or I'm organizing my photos. And that is all true. But we're talking about a different type. You specifically are focusing in on a different type of digital organization. And it's really about corralling that documentation of things, right? You're different than a will. And we're going to get into that in the conversation. But we're talking about accounts, we're talking about passwords, we're talking about all of the things needed for your legacy planning. So why is that part of digital organization so important?
Well, it's important for a number of reasons. First, like, we are now living in the digital world, whether, say, our parents are happy about that or not, the fact remains we are living in a digital society, right? Everyone is using tech. Some are reluctant users, but we're all using it. And sharing information online with loved ones, with family members, allows them to have information at their fingertips, regardless of where they're located. I live in Colorado. My husband's kids, so my bonus kids, one lives an hour away, one is in Iowa. My biological blood family is all scattered on the East Coast. So if something unexpected were to happen to me, and let's say me and my husband were together, my family and his kids are going to have to produce some documents in short order, like our medical directive, let's say, if they're advocating for our healthcare. And also if you happen to live in an area that's, say, prone to evacuations, wildfires in my part of the country, hurricanes, and if you can keep as much of your information online where you can access it, even if you are not, say, on your personal device because you, in the rush of things, had to leave it behind, or even if you're on vacation and something happens in your home, that data can be accessible wherever you are and wherever your loved ones may happen to be.
Think back to when my kids were little and I used to have babysitters, and I had on my refrigerator, like I created it on my computer, but then I printed it out and I had on, it was like, here's the number for the pediatrician, here's the number for the vet, here's the number. And I had like those emergency contacts, like here's my neighbor's phone number. Like I'm totally dating myself, right? But these are the things that I used to have. And this is the days before cell phones and things, and so you had all of that there for people. And again, like you said, so much of the information, because we walk around and all of our stuff is like in our, and I'm, for any of our audio listeners, I'm holding up my phone, we walk around with a complete directory in our phones. But what happens if we're not here to access that? And I think that's really the scary thing. And we just, as a quick sidebar, this hit home for us, well, my extended family, about a month ago. My sister-in-law's sister-in-law, passed away suddenly, and she was young, very, very unexpected, single mom, 2 teenage girls, and the gathering, trying to get into her phone, trying to get her accounts. In addition to the fact that they are mourning and in shock over this unexpected, you're not talking about somebody who was like, I had a diagnosis, let's get all our affairs in order. We're talking, this was a complete, like, went down to take a nap and did not wake up. I mean, horrible, horrible tragedy. And I saw firsthand what my sister-in-law and brother-in-law were going through, trying to piecemeal and put together a story of documentation to be able to access for her kids. And it was at that moment where I was like I saw firsthand where what you have put together and what you are providing for people, whether it's in their business or at home, is a lifeline.
It is, because as you mentioned, right, this grief, the sudden loss, or even the anticipated loss, we don't know how we are going to react emotionally, mentally, even physically to an event like this. And the digital world, while it makes our everyday lives more convenient, when we are not around, or if we're in an accident and we're simply unable to communicate, or we have a traumatic brain injury and we don't even remember our names, we need to help it to make things easier for our loved ones, because their world is going to be turned upside down. And I kind of tease my husband. I've been on a mission lately. In my contacts on my phone, I have 943 saved. Right? So while he can access my phone, I've challenged him a couple of times. Remember, we got married a little bit later in life, and I'm like, babe, who are you going to call? And I'm like, you're not going to call all 943 of these people. I was like, how are you going to know which ones are like the important ones? And his response is, well, I'll just post it on Facebook. And I'm like, no, you won't, because that's not aligned with my values. Now I realize for him, when he passes, I can post it on Facebook. I have his permission, but I'm like, no.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it's, you think about all the little details, right, that matter. Now, here's a question I have for you. Mm-hmm. So we know that organization as a general entity is one of the it's a source of stress for a lot of people. We procrastinate on things because most of us are overwhelmed, overscheduled with things in our lives. How do you, I'm, I guess this is an education for me as well. How do you communicate to people the importance of prioritizing this? Because people hear a story and they're like, oh, yes, I need to do this. But they're so busy with the day to day of, I got it, especially, if it's like, I have this deadline for work, or I got to get the kids to school, or I'm chauffeuring them around and I'm exhausted. And I'm trying to keep up with laundry. So you have this never ending running to do list of everyday things. And then on top of it, the thought of even beginning to gather this information just seems like overwhelming.
Yeah,
How
it's
do you,
daunting.
it is daunting. How do you, convince people that this matters and this is not a tomorrow problem. This is something that you should start thinking about today. And then so this is like two-part question. So that's the first part. And then once they say, okay, I recognize that this is important, what is the next step? And where do they even begin? So now I'm going to shut up and let you talk.
I have found that storytelling can be the most impactful. And through storytelling, and I'm going to give a couple of examples, it allows people to figure out what is most important to them. So, a family that, say, has multi-generational wealth, money and their assets and their liabilities may be top of mind. Here in town, there was a wife a couple years ago who passed away, very tragically, very unexpected, left her husband and two elementary school kids behind. So their world was rocked. Very similar to me, the wife was in charge of household operations. She paid the mortgage, she paid all of the utility bills, she handled all of the auto ship deliveries of things because it was making her life easier.
Mm-hmm.
She did all of those things online, right? Amazon or Walmart Plus isn't sending a paper receipt to a mailbox, right? And her husband, going back to what you were saying earlier, it was such a sudden event that the husband and the kids were in survival mode, right? And the husband's focus was on caring for those kids. And it wasn't until 7 months after she passed that the electricity was cut off when he realized, I haven't been paying the electric bill. Oh, I haven't been paying the water bill. I haven't been paying the credit cards. All because she was doing everything online and he had no access to her email. There was a woman up in Denver recently who was in the audience of a group that I was giving a talk to, and I was talking about Facebook, and she actually interrupted and was very visibly upset. And she told everyone in the audience, she says, you all need to listen to Kate. And she proceeded to tell us that she lost her husband 7 years ago from a long illness. So it was an anticipated passing. But back then, this whole concept of a digital legacy wasn't a thing. No one was talking about it. So she didn't have the password to his Facebook account. And Facebook's terms of service say that they're not going to give anyone access to the account. Well, she was crying as she was telling us the story because 2 years ago, that dormant Facebook account was hacked. And hackers were sending her messages from her deceased husband's account.
Oh
And
my
so she
gosh.
talked about the emotional trauma that created. A friend of mine's brother-in-law was a U.S. Marshal, and he happened to get into a fatal car accident on the way to work one afternoon. And they had an infant child, and literally that morning, he was on the floor with his phone. For those of you who are watching the YouTube video of this, he's on the phone, taking selfie videos with the infant. Well, those videos were saved and pushed up to his Apple ID account. his wife, despite being legally married, has no legal access to that account because of Apple's terms of service agreement. All those, we check those boxes when we create all these accounts, but no one reads those agreements that we are consenting to. And so she's unable to get access to the videos that he took just a couple of hours before he passed. So I mean, there's so many different stories, but it all comes back to, what is the most important thing? Is the most important thing to you for your loved ones to understand what your financial responsibilities are, right? Because remember, settling our debts is part of closing out our affairs. Is it most important that they access and have the ability to access your digital photos? Or maybe you're in charge of household operations, and the spouse is going to have to take over all of those things. So I always start, when I work one-on-one with people, it's like, okay, well, what's most important to you? Let's tackle that. Let's tackle that big rock, and then let's tackle the next one.
Which is really not that different of an approach to physical organization. When you talk about, my whole life or my whole house is disorganized, or I don't have a system, and I would sit there and say, well, where is your biggest pain point? And also there's a couple ways. It's like, what's my biggest pain point? And then sometimes I'll also, if somebody's very overwhelmed, what is our lowest hanging fruit? What are the easy things? What are the easy things that so like, I might have, a running tab, don't cringe, on my phone of what my passwords are to certain things, but I don't have all my accounts. But I could easily, which I did do, you'll be proud of me, when I went through it, is I went through, and we're going to kind of give a snapshot of, or an overview, not a literal snapshot, but like an overview of like kind of how you've laid it out, so like actionable and easy, so that if you're like, I just have 15 minutes, I'm just going to go in and type this in. And for me, like, I literally just opened up, where I have my stuff, and I just copied and pasted it from one into this thing that I then shared with Josh and the girls. And like, here's the access to this if they ever need it. So
that's wonderful. What a gift you've just done for them.
And it is something that, again, you don't see that in the immediate, but if they are like, hey, we need this. And I saw it with my sister-in-law's sister-in-law. Her daughter is going off to college. I mean, by the time this drops, she'll be in freshman year, and she needed her fall tuition paid, and they couldn't access her 529 because they didn't have the account. Like, and this poor girl is talking about, this is a real life story of people. Like, I'm not even joking. This poor girl who was getting ready to leave for college, her dreams of her mom going and decorating her dorm room, she's ripped from her. And on top of that, she now has financial aid going, you need to have this money paid. And she doesn't even know where to go in and get, like, where the funds are. I mean, like, that is her, like, those are the things, like, that's not what this poor child needs to be thinking about right now,
Absolutely.
So
my heart breaks for her. Oh
yeah. And I say this, guys, not to bring the party down, but to say, we never know what's going to happen. And the whole purpose of any type of organization is the ease of retrieval. I will say it till I'm blue in the face. How quickly can you get what you need when you need it? And this estate succession planning, and I do want to talk a little bit about how it's different than a will, because some people are like, well, I just have a will, everything's going to go to somebody. I've taken care of that. And if you guys don't have a will, you need to put that on your list too, because we need to make sure we have that as well. But how is this different, or how is this a complement to, I already have a power of attorney, I already have a medical proxy, I already have it, all of those things.
All right, we'll start with just a high level explanation, because 1 in 3-ish Americans have a will. So that means 60 some odd percent of us don't. Right? So an estate plan, those legal documents outline who is going to have the legal authority to make financial decisions on your behalf, make medical decisions, care for your minor children. And it's also going to include instructions on how your property is going to be distributed. And property could mean, oh, my daughter is getting the house, and my 401k is going to be split in 3 ways, right? So that is the plan, and that basically authorizes a person to execute the plan. But the organizing all of the information is complementary, because just because you have a plan in place, you need to be able to potentially produce those documents in short order, depending on the scenario, right? If parents are in a car accident and they're going to be in the hospital, let's just say for 2 weeks, right? The guardian is going to need to be able to produce that guardianship document. Otherwise, a neutral, AKA the state, is going to determine where the kids are going to go. And I think parents want to be able to make those decisions on behalf of their children, right? Same with medical care. I'm hiking in the Rocky Mountains. I fall, lose consciousness. Who's in charge of my medical decisions? Well, my husband, my brother are going to have to produce that document, especially because medical personnel will take heroic actions to save us. And if we don't want that, then our loved ones need to be able to produce that document. And then in our digital age, just because someone is named as an executor in a will, that, believe it or not, as I touched on earlier, does not actually grant them the authority to access online accounts. Every platform, Facebook, Dropbox, Google, they all have a different terms of service agreement. Some of them have verbiage that say, okay, yes, you can send us a will. LinkedIn requires a copy of a death certificate.
I was literally gonna ask. I was waiting. That was one of my things is, and again, not to be morbid, people, but like, because do you need to, like, can you produce, say, hey, here's a copy of a death certificate, I need access to this?
Every platform is different, and some are willing to work with families a little bit more than others, and some are, in my opinion, horribly offensive in this space. And as soon as a loved one reaches out to say, hey, my husband passed away and I would like to, I'd like to understand the process to get access, not only will they not give access, they will delete the account. So some companies are just awful.
Gosh.
And so figuring all of this out, Lori, while we're also going through our grief, is not only hard and difficult, but why are we doing this? We love the people that we are going to be leaving behind. Let's do what we can to make things a little bit easier. And you were talking earlier about that ease of retrieval, even that 529, that heartbreaking story. My husband has a couple of 529s, and they're not mailing him paper statements to the house.
No.
Right? And so had I not sat him down years ago and we had that conversation, okay, play the game. What do you have? What do you have? I wouldn't necessarily know all of that information. So it's so important for us to tell our loved ones what we have. And even in my password manager, I have like 514 passwords. Now, probably about 100 of them are related to my business. So that means I have 400 personal online digital accounts.
Which is like crazy town. But I think when we sit down and think about all the different things that we use or that we access, it adds up.
It adds up. I mean, even my library card has a digital account.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Okay. So obviously if we beat it, with a dead horse, no pun intended, of like letting people, such a bad expression. But we really have drilled in the importance of this, sharing some kind of worst case scenario stories. But if people are sitting here today and going, okay, I know this is important. I want to do this. I know I need to do this. What are some, and I'm talking like very low hanging fruit, like what are some very actionable, like 3 things that people could do today to just start the ball rolling? Obviously, we're going to link up to all things that you do. We have a special promo for the listeners, all that good stuff. But if someone's like, I want to do something like today, what can I do to even begin this conversation?
Okay, so like I said earlier, it comes back to what is most important to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if finances is most important to you, because even like we just said, that 529, that's all in the digital space, having a list of all of your financial accounts that are worth money is very important. I have a dear friend of mine who is actually in her 4th year of probate
Oh
because
gosh.
they just discovered another asset that her father had that none of them knew about. So they've got to go back to probate. And in this age of online banking, right, we might be opening up a new credit card because they're offering this great reward incentive. Maybe we're paying off a car loan, or we've opened up a new online savings account because we're getting a better interest rate. Our financial assets and our financial picture have the potential to change. So if finances is important to you, start there. Social media can be potentially a blocker for some people because we're not paying for these accounts, but
Mm-hmm.
yet they have high emotional and sentimental value to loved ones. And so if that is important, then make sure your loved ones know how to access your social media accounts. And if you're using, say, Facebook, designate your legacy contact. That is the best way to let Facebook know who you want to have access to your account. And then lastly, for some people, their medical information is top of mind. This is something that I found working particularly with older individuals. They want to make sure that their family members know all of the medications that they're taking. This way that the individual who is in charge of their medical decisions has that information and can provide that to medical teams, so they're not inadvertently given a medication that may like counteract what's already in their system. And if you're not comfortable sharing that kind of information, then set up your medical ID on your phone. First responders are now trained to look at an individual's phone to see if they have a medical ID populated. So you can specify, yes, I'm an organ donor. This is my blood type. These are the meds I'm taking. Oh, yes, I've had a hysterectomy. You can put in as much or as little as you want. It is up to you because it's not tied to any medical portal out there.
Great. And here's the thing, guys, if you're like, because sometimes we don't even know what questions to ask. And I think that that's just, you don't know what you don't know. What I love about Kate's program, and I'm going to kind of underhand pitch this so that you can then lead into what the promo is for our listeners. And again, I did it myself first because I was like, I want to be educated. I went through your digital course because you have a couple different ways that you educate people, and I'll let you talk about that. Everything, and I printed them out. So for anybody who's watching on YouTube, so there's a couple different components. She's got a worksheet for all my, like, I like to write pen and paper, and it's broken down by category. She's got financial, she's got device, she's got home and personal, and it really breaks it down like property. So some of them are going to be relevant to you, some of them might not be. And you can sit down, and it just, first of all, gives you prompts to go, oh yeah, let me think about that. Oh yeah, let me think about that. Because we forget, or we take for granted, for all of these million things, like you said, that it takes to like run our lives. And so you go from this first step of like, let's look at our categories to then saying, hey, I want to do it all digitally. And you could put it in an Excel spreadsheet. You could put it in a Google sheet. You could say, hey, I want to print this out and put it in a binder and call it the When I Die binder. You can choose how you have this and who you want to share it with. But the prompts were key because it reminded me of, oh, yes, I have this. Like the household stuff was easy for me because I keep a household budget. So I went through and I'm like, okay, these are the bills I pay every month. Where are they tied to? Do I pay it online? Do I get a bill? Is it a quarterly thing? Like I went through and I think you have 12 different categories, if I'm not mistaken, on the thing. And I just said, I'm going to do one category, I'm going to do one category at a time. And some categories were really quick and short. And other categories were like lengthier and they took me a couple days because I was like, okay, I need to take a break because you're not going to sit there forever. So I just said, I'm going to take it one category at a time. And then when I'm done, move on to the next until I have them all completed. So it's very systematic and actionable because it is broken down like in such a simplistic way.
Well, thank you. That's a huge compliment. And that's the engineer in me coming out, right? It's that you use that worksheet, you watch the 5-6 minute video has all of me basically asking some questions. And then suddenly you fill out your worksheet and you're like, holy cow, I didn't think I had that much related to medical even, right? I mean, nowadays we can see medical doctors of all different specialties. And once you fill out that worksheet, you use that worksheet as your compass to then figure out what information and what details do I actually now have to gather, right? Maybe it's the renewal date of the Amazon Prime account, or it's the password to my Apple account. And so, yes, I spent a lot of time designing that program, Lori. So thank you so much. And like you said, because we have different styles, some of us still very much prefer paper. So there's worksheets that you can print out. My clients are about 50-50 split now. People want fillable digital forms. So you have that option as well. And then ultimately, after you fill out that worksheet or doodle on it or however your brain works, then you're going to sit and you're going to fill out a spreadsheet and you can get it in Excel or Google Sheets form. And then the very last lesson, we talk about how do you develop this routine to update this information? Because it is going to change.
Well, and that's the thing is so much of it, especially when it comes to passwords, like we know how sometimes things change or credit cards and things like that. So it is like any other organizing system, something that you need to go in there and practice the maintenance of updating.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, a password manager will help a little bit with managing the changing of the passwords. But hey, I mean, my United or my Southwest account, right? Especially if you're a little bit of a digital hoarder and people love to accumulate, right? They love to accumulate their reward points, right? My husband and I, and you know this, Lori, we're taking a significant trip later this year. And we're we're using basically all of the points that we've been hoarding. But if something happens to us before we go, we talk about this would be a gift to our loved ones that they could take a trip in our honor.
Yeah.
Right. No, so many different things to think about.
Absolutely. So on that note, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can learn more about all the things that you're doing. And if they are interested in saying, hey, this is something I'm going to do, where can they go to get the course or sign up for any of your live trainings?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and I have a special website for this Organized Life listeners, and that is going to be www.thedigitalwrangler.com/ TOL for This Organized Life. That website is chock full of resources. If you have an Apple account, a Facebook account, a Dropbox, even a Google account, there's going to be videos or articles there on how to legally designate someone to have access to your account. So even if you just take those steps, that is going to be a gift for your loved ones. I also have a couple of videos on how to set up your medical ID and designate emergency contacts, which can be very, very helpful. It just, a friend of mine, her friends were just in a terrible car crash. And because they had settings set up on their phone, their adult children were alerted, and that allowed the first responders to arrive on scene much faster, and therefore they got the medical attention that they needed quicker. In terms of offers for your audience, I'm going to be offering everyone a 10% off any of my digital courses and products. So my foundational courses, which Lori took, was very, very religious and gave me some great feedback on. That's we cover those 12 topics, and it's available in 4 different versions. So if you like your paper worksheets and you're a Google user, find the version that offers that combination. I'm also launching a add-on. So once you take that foundational course that focuses on 12 areas that most people have in common, there's now a new add-on course out there for parents of minor children. There is so much information that pertains to our children and the would-be guardians. We need to make it as easy as possible, not just for the guardians, but also for the kids. So everything from their medical history down to, I don't know, the blankie that they sleep at night is covered in that add-on course. And we haven't even touched on solopreneurs and small business owners, but I have a business succession playbook that those individuals can put in all of their business details to help ensure that the successor can step into that business with ease.
All of these, and those are all their own episodes in and of themselves. And
Yes.
I'm the one for parents is going to be so great, because not only for those, like, God forbid, like the little kids, that's all important, but I'm a mom of kids that are entering or have entered adulthood. And you go as a parent from having complete access to all of your kids' medical records, all of their doctors, have literally in a day to nothing, no access, and they can grant that to you. And I've empowered my kids to do it. So what that we're definitely going to have you back and talk about that in another episode. But I'm telling you guys, this foundational course that she has, you could try to piecemeal this all on your own, but the amount of detail and the way that Kate has broken it down so simple by category makes it so easy to follow, because it gives you the step-by-step. Yes, you still have to go and gather the information, but she's sending you on a very clear scavenger hunt of what you have to find. You still have to find where in your house that lives, right? Or where on your computer it lives, but she's telling you exactly what you need. And it is worth, and I'm saying this truthfully as someone who has done it, it is worth it's worth its weight in gold. It's worth every penny. So please, I encourage you to check that out. And for all my professional organizers who might be listening to this show, this is something that I really highly recommend you guys check out for your clients. And we could talk about that too. But it's such a valuable piece of the organizing puzzle that we need to think about. And sometimes it's hard when you're so caught up in all of the other things. So thank you for thinking about this and making it very actionable for us to do. So even though it's overwhelming, you've made it really, really simple. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
All right, guys. So I feel like I've given you enough of an endorsement. You know where to go. Don't worry if you didn't remember it. We have the links in the show notes. It's also going to be on the website, but it's the digitalwrangler.com/TOL to get your promo, your 10% off for any of Kate's digital offerings or any offerings that she has. So please check that out. And again, if you have any questions or if there's a specific topic that you want to hear from us on this show, let us know. Write us in. You could just write us at info@simplybeorganized. There's a contact form right on our website. You could just go there. We love to be able to deliver these episodes that make sense for you of where you are in your life. So if you're out there and you're listening, you're like, I would love this. And you know what? We may even have an episode. So shoot us a note and I may be like, hey, tune into, episode 212 and that covered your topic. So we may already have something out there. We could just direct you to where it is, because with over 400 episodes, if you're just new to our crew, you might not have listened to all of them. So let us help direct you to where you want to go. Kate, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. For all of you guys out there, I will be back next week with another episode. Until then, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love and share it with your friends. And if this is your first time joining us, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at This Organized Life Podcast. And if you'd like to connect with us, you can head on over to our website at simply the letter B like boy organized.com, which is filled with tons of resources, including free downloads, checklists, links to our amazing organizing partners, and all of our digital offerings. I'll see you next week for another episode of This Organized Life.